Yeah. Septic. Sheriff audit. Okay, good.
Yeah. Put that on, last minute onto the, yeah.
I mean, we had a agenda item. How that process is supposed to be.
All right, welcome everyone to Athens City Hall. Today is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. We are here for a couple of meeting segments this evening. We'll have an executive session at the close of the public time. And then we are going to begin with a special called session and then follow that with our regularly scheduled agenda-setting meeting. I'm going to go ahead and ask Clerk Spratland to call the roll.
Davenport.
Present.
Parker.
Here.
Link.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Denson.
Here.
Naismith.
Present.
Edwards.
Here.
Harrod.
Present.
Thornton. And Hamby.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and consider some new business under suspension of rules. So I'd ask for a motion of suspension of rules.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Naismith, a second from Commissioner Denson for suspension of rules. All in favor? Aye. All right, we do have public input opportunity right now on the single item of business that is on our special called session, which is our resolution in support of Athens immigrant, undocumented, and Latinx community. Just a new feature throughout this evening and coming up in future meetings. We have a new comment card simply to make sure that we're accurately capturing everybody's name. And so you'll see comment cards in the hallway, and there will also be some at the podium. So if you would just write your name and address, and you can hand that to the attorney. We just want to make sure we capture your name correctly. So everybody bring a pen if you'd like us to capture that correctly. So I'll now call for any member of the public who would like to speak to the item on our special called session. Okay. So I am delighted that members of the commission, particularly Commissioner Denson and others, have collaborated to bring forward a resolution given recognition of the time we are in history right now. And I should note that here on August 19th, not only are we here to recognize this moment in history with all its current challenges and travails, but this is also the date when we recognize the 400th anniversary of the persons who were brought enslaved to what later became the United States in Jamestown, Virginia, just 30 miles from where I grew up. Interestingly, as a child, I never thought about Jamestown as being the origin of U.S. slavery. I thought about it as a place where, when I was 10 or 12, I envisioned women in bonnets and men in boots. And I think we're at a time in history right now when we need to be much more open-eyed, and we need to recognize the challenges that have been forced upon people in violation of what I think everybody recognizes as a set of human rights. So I'm going to ask Beto Mendoza to come forward. He and I are going to share a mic. We have some words that I will read in English and he will read in Spanish. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
All right. So this is a resolution in support of Athens immigrant, undocumented, and Latinx community.
Es una resolución en apoyo a los inmigrantes, los residentes indocumentados y la comunidad latina en Athens.
Whereas Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, embraces and celebrates our diversity of cultures, languages, religions, and ethnicities, and the Athens-Clarke County community benefits from the hard work, cultural offerings, and tax dollars of the immigrants who call Athens, Georgia, home.
Considerando que el condado de Athens-Clarke, Georgia, acoge y celebra nuestra diversidad de culturas, idiomas, religiones y etnias, y que la comunidad del condado de Athens-Clarke se beneficia del trabajo duro, las ofertas culturales y las contribuciones en los taxes de los inmigrantes que hacen su vida en Athens, Georgia, y
And whereas Athens-Clarke County, Georgia appreciates the many cultural, educational, and economic contributions of the Latinx community that continues to give.
Considerando que el condado de Athens-Clarke, Georgia, valora las muchas contribuciones culturales, educacionales y económicas que la comunidad latina sigue dando.
And whereas 1 in 10 Georgia residents is an immigrant, and more than 375,000 undocumented residents live in Georgia.
Considerando que 1 de cada 10 residentes de Georgia es inmigrante y que más de 375,000 residentes indocumentados viven en Georgia.
And whereas white nationalists and xenophobes have been emboldened by some politicians and members of the media, and we recognize that our entire community, not just people of color and immigrants, is harmed by the existence of white supremacy in our community going unchallenged.
Considerando que los nacionalistas blancos y los xenófobos han sido alentados por algunos políticos y algunos medios de comunicación y que reconocemos que nuestra comunidad entera, no solo la gente de color y los inmigrantes, se dañan cuando la existencia de la supremacía blanca en nuestras comunidades no se resiste.
And whereas our immigrant and undocumented neighbors, especially those of Latinx heritage, face daily fears and threats from individuals and institutions such as ICE, and we have witnessed these fears and threats become realities in the tragedies of the El Paso shooting, the family separations and incarcerations at our southern border, and the mass arrests in Mississippi.
Considerando que nuestros vecinos inmigrantes e indocumentados, especialmente los de ascendencia latina, enfrentan el miedo y la amenaza diarios de individuos y de las instituciones como ICE, y hemos visto estos medios y amenazas realizadas en las tragedias del tiroteo del Paso, la separación de familias y la encarcelación en la frontera sur y los arrestos en masa en Mississippi.
And whereas for the Athens community to be whole, it is necessary that families and loved ones remain together and that all people, including those without documentation, feel welcome and comfortable interacting with local law enforcement, their local government, and all services provided by such.
Considerando que lograr la integridad de la comunidad de Athens es necesario que las familias y las personas queridas se queden juntas y que todas las personas, inclusive los que no tienen documentos, se sientan acogidas y cómodas al interactuar con los cuerpos de seguridad local, su gobierno local y todos los servicios provistos por estos.
And whereas we unflinchingly defend the human rights of all people, including citizens, non-citizens, and those without documentation, and recognize that we cannot be witness to the violation of constitutional rights given to all people, repeatedly reaffirmed in cases such as Yickwo v. Hopkins and Plyler v. Doe.
Considerando que defendemos implacablemente los derechos humanos de todas las personas, incluyendo los ciudadanos, los no ciudadanos y los que no tienen documentación, y que reconocemos que no podemos aceptar la violación de los derechos constitucionales dados a todas las personas, reafirmados repetidamente en casos como Yickwo, Hopkins, and Plyler v. Doe.
Therefore, let it be resolved by the Mayor and Commission of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, that
En consecuencia, el alcalde y la comisión del condado de Athens-Clarke, Georgia, proclama que
the Athens-Clarke County Unified Government is welcoming to people from all lands and backgrounds and strives to foster a community where individuals and families of all statuses feel safe, are able to prosper, and can breathe free.
el gobierno unificado del condado de Athens-Clarke acoge a las personas de todas las tierras y todos los orígenes y se esfuerza por fomentar una comunidad en la que los individuos y las familias de todos los estatus se sientan cómodos, sean capaces de prosperar y puedan respirar libres.
And the Athens-Clarke County Unified Government denounces white supremacy and recognizes the role that some government institutions have played in creating it and commits itself to working to reverse the damage that has resulted to Black, brown, and other minority communities.
El gobierno unificado del condado de Athens-Clarke denuncia la supremacía blanca y reconoce el papel que algunas instituciones gubernamentales han desempeñado en crearla y se compromete a trabajar para enmendar los daños hechos a las comunidades negras, latinas y de todas las demás minorías.
Therefore, let it be resolved. All in the room who agree, please respond by saying aye. Aye. All right, thank you.
Somebody needs to work on the county clerk yesterday. Needs to be nice.
Thank you, Beto. Thank you. Thank you all. I would ask for a motion to exit our special called session and to enter into executive session upon the conclusion of our agenda-setting meeting.
So moved.
Formal motion to adopt the resolution. Thank you, Gene.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion from Commissioner Denson, second from Commissioner Link. Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something, not to take away from the ceremony or anything, because I do want this to move forward. But I wondered if anybody else was interested in this one word here that we could improve it on there. It's the first paragraph where it says cultural offerings. And to me, that implies, and I think in translation could imply that we're an expected gift. And it seems to me that we could have cultural enhancements that would be a more, less tangible but rewarding enhancement that the diversity of our community brings. And if anybody else thinks so, that would improve it so that it wasn't misunderstood as an expected gift upon arrival.
Cultural enhancements?
Do I hear, can I move that we,
I would like to hear from Beto what the translation of that word was in his translation, the word offerings.
Ofertas.
So it's been
Mr. Mendez, I
literally
apologize.
interpreted as ofertas.
Yeah, ofertas.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to to read another translation. A friend of mine, Alejandra Calva, I don't know if she's so her mom works for the court in Texas, and she sent another translation which was very, very different to this. But I don't think that makes sense. They're like, I think I will ask, what's the point on the? Can you repeat that, please?
in the first paragraph where it talks about the community benefits from hard work, cultural offerings, I was thinking that it was a more appropriate term would be that we benefit from the cultural enhancements of our diverse populations. And I really appreciate you guys letting me work this out.
So one of the I think one of the achievements of this resolution is to recognize the migrant Latinx culture as a proper culture, as a part of USA culture.
Correct.
No, it's that something is coming to be added to our culture, meaning that that we cannot conceive Athens without tacos,
Yes.
without the pupusas and all this, the salsa. So in that regards, I think I don't have anything to offer, to oppose, or to add on this.
Okay, and I think that might help me too, because enhancement means, now that I'm working it out in front of everybody, that they're improving something that's already here, and the offering is bringing something that maybe wasn't here to begin with. So I think maybe that offerings is more appropriate, as he brought that forward.
Okay.
Thank you for indulging me.
Thanks,
And thank
Commissioner
you
Wright.
for helping me with that.
I might speak to that. I was born and raised in Peachtree City, and we didn't have any live music. No había música en vivo cuando yo crecía como niño. And my cousin, mi prima, se fue a México y se casó con un mexicano, un mariachi. Y ellos vinieron a Peachtree City, en the mariachi, ellos tocaron música todas las semanas, jueves, and I started going, and appreciating live music and loving live music and cultivating this love for Mexican culture, la cultura y la música. And without that music, without that oferta musical de México, no había música en Peachtree City. Entonces había una oferta de México a mí. And it cultivated this love for the Spanish language for me, and I went on and studied Spanish, got a degree in Spanish, taught Spanish, and some of the most enriching moments of my life have been traveling throughout Latino America and Argentina and Costa Rica, and not just learning about the culture of Latin America or Mexico, but viajando en otros países y examinando los Estados Unidos desde afuera. Y yo aprendí mucho así. And so I would just say que yo apoyo la comunidad latina y me doy cuenta que la cultura que vino aquí de otros países enriquece la cultura aquí. Entonces, bienvenidos a América. Gracias por traer tu cultura aquí. Y nosotros aquí te apoyamos mucho. Y nos encantaba la comunidad latina. Gracias.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, thank Commissioner Denson and the mayor for bringing this forward. And I want to note the importance of it. I mean, yes, it is a resolution, and in many ways it's merely symbolic because despite the level of power that we've been given up here, there's a lot of power we don't have to stop some of the egregious offenses to morality that are going on in a national level from powers higher than we have. But I want to assert the importance of us speaking out and using our voice and what little power we have to condemn those actions and to support our fellow human beings of all races, religions, national backgrounds, and to support humanity in general. And to remind everyone to use that voice whenever possible to condemn those who would not support humanity in general. You know, we do have a certain privilege of power here, and this is one way we can assert it, and I want to encourage everyone else out there to take advantage of whatever power they have to do so as well.
Commissioner Neesmith.
Yeah, this is, for me, this is not a political statement. This is a statement of beliefs. As a thinking human being, a person who believes in the Constitution, a person who has strong Christian values, must I say, that it's a great opportunity to be able to express my personal beliefs about how the Constitution and the Bill of Rights applies to all people that are in this country. And I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Thornton.
First of all, I don't have the eloquence of my commissioner to speak Spanish. So if you need to translate for me, somebody, I would appreciate that. I'm sorry I'm late. I would have rather, I had some things that come up, but I would not miss this opportunity to make a vote in favor of the direction that we're going in. I have always said that this local government needs to lead, and sometimes leading looks different. But God, you're not any different from anybody else. I have experience with Black racism, Black cultures being denied. I would not have missed this vote. I may ease out, but this vote was very important for me today to make a statement, to show my support. I've known Beto for a minute, and we've come a long way, but we got a long way to go, guys. We got a long way to go. But you have shown your tenacity, and because you've shown your tenacity, I definitely want my vote to show my support as we move forward together. You don't have to say all that, they got it.
Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just felt like it was, as Commissioner Lincoln, this is the least that we could do. When we see what's happening in our nation, in our world, when we saw what happened in El Paso, when we saw what happened in Mississippi with those raids, in a community that looks very much like Athens, Georgia, a city of a similar size in the South, with a poultry plant industry and a large Latinx community. There's so little that we can do, but this is something that we can do. And I want to let anybody in our community who feels at risk or feels unsafe or feels at threat. I know this resolution isn't going to make that go away. But I hope it just makes any of those individuals who have those feelings feel like there's at least another few people that have your back, that are behind you, that support you. And they're going to do whatever we can to keep you safe, to make this community be a community that is for everyone. It's also just a great opportunity for us to speak to the, one of the groups of people who make this community so amazing, that make Athens a home that I'm so proud of, and like the Latinx community. And this would be a fantastic opportunity also just to plug that we have the next Latinx Fest coming up on September 28th. So this is just one of the steps that we can have to support that community, and everybody in this community in Athens, Georgia, Northeast Georgia can come out to the streets of downtown to celebrate it publicly and openly at the next Latinx Fest too.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept the resolution and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I would ask now for a motion to enter into executive session upon conclusion of our regular agenda-setting meeting and close this special called session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Mr. Mendoza.
May I, with all respect, that the symbolism of this building and you deserve, the respect you guys deserve.
Step to the mic if you could, that way the camera can capture you.
Because special of this session, there is many people who are here and don't speak the language we've been using. They didn't know they can give a testimony, and they were prepared to address their commission and their mayor. I'm just asking you if you let them to do that.
Yeah, so now is the, and if you could translate for me, now is the time when any citizen can speak for 3 minutes.
Ahora es el tiempo que cualquier persona puede pasar y hablar por 3 minutos.
And if you do, we just need your name that you could print on the card in front of you on the podium.
Oh. Y si quieres hablar, vas a poner tu nombre aquí. También te piden tu dirección aquí en esta tarjeta.
Okay.
Well, I translate as a residence and anyone. I didn't say citizens.
Residents, yes, correct.
Residents.
Yes, if you were in Athens, you were a citizen of Athens.
So, toda la gente que reside en Athens son ciudadanos de Athens. Y Adam. Pásalo en español. Adelante.
We may want to explain what that card is.
Tengan todos los presentes buenas tardes.
Good afternoon to everyone who's here.
Para mí es un privilegio estar aquí,
For me, it's a privilege to be here.
conocerlos a ustedes
To know all of you,
es una bendición.
it's a blessing.
Mi nombre es María Fernández,
My name is Maria Fernandez.
vivo aquí en Ate,
I live here in Athens.
me mudé hace un año
I moved here a year ago.
y mi testimonio en esta tarde es
And my testimony this afternoon is
el temor y el terror que nuestros niños de nuestra comunidad están viviendo
the fear and the terror that the kids in our community are feeling
por el miedo a inmigración
for fear of the immigration police
y el miedo también a los tiroteos.
and the fear of the shootings also.
Necesitamos una comunidad segura,
We need a secure community,
que nuestros niños
that our kids
y niñas
and girls
puedan vivir
can live
tranquilos.
tranquilly.
Yo ya viví ese temor
I already lived that fear,
y es un terror.
and it's a terror.
Hace 3 semanas
3 weeks ago,
llegaron a mi casa.
they came to my house.
Mis niños lloraron mucho.
My kids cried a lot.
Tengo un niño de 8 años,
I have an 8-year-old kid
una niña de 2 años.
and a 2-year-old girl.
No sabía yo qué hacer,
I didn't know what to do.
no sabía qué decirles.
I didn't know what to tell them.
Solo les dije que guardara silencio
I just told them to stay quiet
y que yo, su madre,
and that I, as their mother,
iba a protegerlos.
I was going to protect them.
Y por eso estoy aquí,
And that's why I'm here.
no porque sea valiente,
Not because I'm brave,
es por mis niños,
it's for my kids,
que ellos están pasando trauma.
that they're passing through trauma.
Hoy apenas escuchan que la puerta la suenan.
Just today, they heard that someone knocked on the door.
Ellos dicen, no abras, mamá, porque no quiero que nos separen.
They said, "Don't open, Mom, because I don't want them to separate us."
Todos venimos aquí
We all came here
a trabajar a esta nación. Para mí es una nación bien hermosa,
to work in this nation. For me, it's a very beautiful nation
de oportunidades,
of opportunities,
pero también queremos vivir y ver nuestros niños crecer.
but we also want to live and see our kids grow up.
Y el temor a veces lo da terror muchas veces.
And the fear sometimes gives them so much terror.
Esto es todo lo que tengo que decir.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. Any others who would like to speak?
Muy buenas tardes a todos
And good afternoon to all of y'all,
y que Dios los bendiga a todos.
and that God bless all of you.
Mi nombre es Julio César Hernández
My name is Julio Cesar Hernandez,
y soy un pastor
and I'm a pastor,
cristiano
Christian,
en la ciudad de Athens,
in Athens,
con una congregación
with a congregation,
latina
Latino,
de diferentes nacionalidades
from different nationalities,
como Perú,
like Peru,
El Salvador, Honduras, México, Nicaragua y varias nacionalidades.
and various other nationalities.
Somos como 80 miembros
We are about 80 members,
entre familias, hijos,
families, kids,
y yo estoy preocupado
and I'm worried
concerniente a las deportaciones,
in regard to deportations,
y muchos de nuestros miembros
and many of our members
están faltando mucho a nuestras iglesias
are missing church often
por el temor
because of their fear
de manejar
from driving,
y que los pueda parar un policía
and that a police officer could stop them,
y que sean deportados.
and that they could be deported.
Estoy viviendo como pastor de la ciudad de Athens
I'm living as a pastor in the city of Athens,
un temor muy fuerte,
a very strong fear.
y yo quisiera pedirles
I would like to ask y'all,
a todo tribunal
this whole commission,
que si nos pueden ayudar
that if you can help us
en esa cuestión de las licencias,
in that question of licenses,
o incluso para que no hubiera deportaciones.
or even so that there wouldn't be deportations.
Muchas de nuestras comunidades
Many of our communities
están siendo atemorizadas
are being stricken with fear.
y casi no quieren salir de sus casas
They barely want to even leave their houses
por esa cuestión de las deportaciones.
because of the question of deportations.
Años atrás,
Many years ago,
tengo yo de pastor aquí en la ciudad de Athens cerca de 18 años
I've been a pastor here in Athens for 18 years,
y antes no había el temor tan grande
and before there
ni la inseguridad como hoy.
wasn't fear or insecurity like
Hoy
there is
en
today.
día es muy fuerte.
Today it's very strong.
Muchos de nuestros miembros
Many of our members
están faltando incluso a la fe porque ya no quieren salir de sus casas
are even missing participating in their faith because they
y
don't
tienen
want to
ese
leave
grande
their
temor
houses.
de ser deportados.
They have that great fear of being deported.
Y yo como pastor, como una persona que me considero una persona que ayuda a esta comunidad,
And as a pastor and a person who considers myself
Y
someone
yo
who
pienso-
helps people in this community,
y yo pienso que si estoy predicando y enseñando los buenos valores
I think that if I'm preaching and teaching good
para que las
values,
personas sean buenas
so
personas,
people are
personas de
good
bien,
people,
trabajadoras,
so they'll be hardworking,
que paguen sus taxas,
they pay their taxes,
que trabajen
that they work.
y sean unas personas de bien, porque esos son los valores cristianos
Because those are the Christian
que ofrece
values
la Biblia.
that the Bible offers.
Pero hoy, desafortunadamente,
But today,
estamos
unfortunately,
viviendo un temor muy grande
unfortunately, we're living
con respecto a eso.
a great fear.
Así
with
que les
respect
quiero
to that.
pedir,
So I want to ask y'all,
en el nombre de Dios, que si nos pueden ayudar
in the name of God,
formulando una ley
if you can help us
para que nos pueda ayudar a nosotros,
formulating a ley
los
that could help
hispanos.
us,
Queremos decirles
people.
que los hispanos y latinos somos gente de bien,
We want to tell you that Hispanics and Latinos are
gente
good
trabajadora,
people, hardworking people
que ayuda y que aporta a esta preciosa ciudad de
that
Athens.
help and that contribute to this precious city of Athens.
Dios los bendiga.
God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Any other input this evening?
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Mi nombre es María Gómez.
My name is Maria Gomez.
Les agradezco esta oportunidad de poder expresarnos.
I thank you all for this opportunity to express ourselves.
Me siento muy complacida de escuchar muy buenas opiniones
I feel very pleased to hear very good opinions
y escuchar que muchas personas de ustedes nos apoyan y nos consideran.
and hear that many of you support us and are thinking about us.
Somos personas trabajadoras
We are hardworking people,
que si salimos de nuestro país
that if we left from our countries,
fue por la economía.
it was because of the economy.
Y aquí en Athens, amamos a Athens.
And here in Athens, we love Athens.
Yo tengo 16 años viviendo aquí.
I have 16 years living here.
Tengo mis hijos,
I have my kids,
tengo nietos.
grandkids,
Y estamos con el temor
and we're living in
de
fear
que nos puedan sacar de aquí.
that they could take us out of here.
Les pedimos, por favor, que sigan luchando y que nos puedan dar una licencia
We ask you, please, that you continue working on this and that you give us a license
para poder salir a nuestros trabajos,
to be able to go out to our places of work,
nuestras iglesias,
our churches,
por nuestros mandados,
to do our errands
sin el temor.
without fear.
De verdad, abogamos
Truly, we advocate
a su buen corazón
to your good hearts
que somos humanos todos.
that we are all humans.
Nadie escogimos dónde nacer.
None of us chose where to be born.
Nos tocó, ¿verdad? Nosotros, desafortunadamente, nacer en un país que no nos dan las oportunidades.
It happened that some of us, unfortunately,
Es
were
por
born in
e-
places that didn't give us opportunities.
Es por eso que valoramos este hermoso país,
That's why we value this beautiful country.
que de verdad nos ha dado tantas cosas que no tuvimos y lo hemos retribuido con trabajo.
That truly has
Porque
given us so many things that we didn't have and that we've tried to compensate with our work.
La prueba es, como les comentaba, pues hemos salido adelante, pagamos nuestras taxas.
The proof, as we've shown, is that we've gotten ahead and we've paid our taxes.
No queremos ser una carga para este país.
We don't want to be a charge on this country.
Contribuimos
We contribute
en lo que sea necesario.
in whatever is necessary.
Nuevamente digo, abogo a su buen corazón
Again, I
a cada
advocate
uno
to your good hearts of each of you
de ustedes que tengan un poquito de misericordia.
that you have a bit of mercy.
Muchas gracias
Thank you
por su atención.
for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. All right. Thank you all for coming this evening. We appreciate it very much. I believe there's a motion and a second to exit the special called session and upon conclusion of our agenda-setting meeting, enter executive session. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are moving now to our agenda-setting meeting. There will be several opportunities for public input. There will be an opportunity on the consent agenda, a separate opportunity on old and new business, and separate opportunities on each planning and zoning item, of which there's just one this evening. Now is the time when we take citizen input, resident input on our consent agenda, which are items number 1 through 6. Anyone who would like to speak to agenda setting items number 1 through 6? Now is that time. Would any commissioner like to remove an item from the consent agenda and move it to old and new business?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this now instead of at the Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful appointment. If we'll just pull that off for a second, and then it'll go back on.
Okay, fantastic. All right, any other consent agenda item? All right, so now's the time when we take input on old and new business. And so those are items 6 through 11. 6 through 11. All right, seeing no input, we're going to move on, and we'll begin with the consent agenda item number 6. The Commissioner Wright has indicated.
I wanted to brag that Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful is at its fullest ever with all of its board members, and they're very excited about the number of people who are coming forward to help with their mission. And there's a fundraiser on Saturday, Keep Athens, the Dirty Dancing at Little Kings. I also wanted to say that that litter survey that has been out for a couple months, and we had paperwork in our mailboxes about it, and it's amazing how much work they do to get that information. And there were 3 commissioners who filled out the survey. I'm one of them. I have keychains about tired of trash hotline for the other 2 commissioners who might want to or not want to say in public if it was them. But if you will come up to me at the appropriate time, I will give you your keychain.
Yes, I want my keychain.
Tim Denson, I think, is, and there might be somebody else.
It was not me.
Come on, Mr. I Hate Litter.
I'll do it later.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. But anyway, so if that can go back on consent, I just wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. Everybody fine with that going back on consent?
Yes.
All right, and just be forewarned, if you want swag, you have to complete the survey. So thank you, Commissioner Wright. All right, moving on to other new business items. Number 7 is our FY 21 to 25 Consolidated Goals Plan, which is a requirement for us to receive federal funds as we do through the Community Development Block Grant Program. Commissioner Parker?
Thank you. I'm really pleased with these. I think in generally align with a lot of the goals I think the East Athens community has for its renewal and self-improvement. One issue I did bring up at the work session and it still haven't seen included here, is the inclusion of cooperative development under our economic development goals. I think supporting entrepreneurship is really important for building community wealth, but more effective has been proven using worker cooperatives as means of creating more sustainable and dignified jobs, generating more community wealth, improving the quality of life of workers, promoting community and local economic development, and particularly for people who currently lack access to business ownership or even sustainable work options. And so I will be suggesting that we include that among our economic development goals ahead of our voting meeting in September.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Parker. Other input on the consolidated plan? All right. Moving on, number 8 is expanding the glass bottle incentive countywide to all bars and restaurants. Just for the information to be provided to the public, we piloted a program a year ago that would provide an incentive for a lower liquor license fee for those establishments downtown that would sell their 5 most high-volume beers in only aluminum, since aluminum is a very recyclable item and glass is not these days. And so this would expand.
It's also dangerous.
And it's dangerous as well, as my right leg will tell you right now. So we were fortunate. It was nothing too unseemly. But we were going to expand this countywide to all establishments. So any input on this item? Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I want to thank you for moving this forward. I have actually the owner of our topic for Planning Commission currently owns a bar, and he was the first one to come up to me and say, well, what about the rest of us? I've been doing this from the very beginning, so I think it's great that we're rewarding people for their attention to this, and I'm glad. I'd like to see it go on consent.
I would too.
I agree.
Everybody cool with this going to consent? All right, Gene, number 8 will move to consent. All right, any other input on that item for the moment? Commissioner Denson?
I guess I just had a question. As I was reading through the facts on here, and it doesn't make it clear, what if the top beers are like draft? Like, is it the top non-draft beers whenever it's there? Or I'm wondering how that works for bars. If bars can say, like, our top ones are on draft, but then everything else is still on bottle. Like, I wonder if...
Assistant Manager Edwards, could you find out that detail?
We can get back to you on that. The way it reads is if any of the top 5 are either on draft or in aluminum, it would qualify, but we can make sure to confirm that.
Okay, that'd be great, yeah. I think
Yep,
that changes
aluminum-
a little bit how it
aluminum
works.
or draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I concur.
We have to go investigate.
Yeah.
All
Let's
right.
go later.
I think there's a field trip in the offing. All right, moving on. Item number 9 are our 2020 legislative items. We bring forward legislative items every year for our area delegation to the General Assembly, our 2 state senators and our 3 state representatives. There's an edit at your place that was also emailed out yesterday that includes those items that came in after the work session. I think there were 3 or 4 of those. And these were also just arranged by topic now, just for kind of clarity for the delegation. And certainly, if there's any language that needs to be amended, that could be done prior to the voting meeting, first Tuesday of September. Any notes about these items anyone would like to make? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to point out that one of our requests is that the state reverse the ban on undocumented residents receiving driver's licenses. And the community that came out tonight would be very much impacted by that, and just want to point out that that is one of the items that we're requesting of our state legislators, and those who support that, I urge them to reach out to our state legislators on this and many other items.
Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I have a, so how is this going to happen? When we vote on this, we haven't done that a lot. And so a lot of times we just have topics and then we talk to them about the topics, but we don't Explain how this is going to move forward.
So typically, we want a full body endorsement of those items that we're bringing forward to our General Assembly delegation. What the delegation has indicated to us is that they want to know that there's unanimous support from this body for those, that it's not just partial support. What I'd suggest just tactically is when we meet with our delegation members the second Tuesday of September, that we probably highlight a handful of them. Obviously, they can read, and it is a little bit of a lengthy list, but there are a set of these that I think may be novel or unique or pertinent to this legislative session that we just may want to highlight for their response as we seek to have language carried through the upcoming session that'll begin in January.
There is also someone here that they've consistently told us that they're not going to do. So we have to make a decision whether we want to spend our political capital on asking for them again and again and again, or whether we want to spend that on something that they might actually do.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Herod notes that a few of these have seen the light of our day many times, but have lived in darkness in Atlanta. Commissioner Wright?
So as we move forward on the voting meeting, so can we have these numbered? So one that we're referring to them either when we talk about them at the voting meeting as well as at the work session when we have discussions, so we can
Sure.
pick them
Easily done.
concisely there. And then, but we're not going to go through each one and get a vote on each topic.
Certainly, we're not going to get a vote at our voting meeting first Tuesday of
About them
September.
moving forward.
And I would also recommend that we simply highlight maybe half a dozen for them at our conversational session with the delegation members. Obviously, again, they can read.
Right.
But there are probably some of these that do have some specificity around them. I think about the community energy aggregation item that Commissioner Denson brought forward, or the revised language around marijuana under an ounce. Some of these that just are very specific that could get embedded in legislative language. Others of them clearly are sort of budgetary or aspirational.
Right. So, but for our voting meeting, if we have them numbered, are we going to go down and go vote on number one, septic
We
tank?
vote on them
Vote
as
two?
a slate.
Okay.
As a slate.
Thanks for clarifying that.
That's right. Yeah, we can definitely number them. All right.
I'd like to report, just so you know, on a couple of these items. One is the mayor's language about nonpartisan unified government elections moved to the general elections date if local preferences is established. I brought this up to the ACCG policy-making meeting last week, and it was very new to most of those people. Once I explained it, I asked them to make it a high priority on their high list. And I got a call from the ACCG lawyer a couple of days ago asking for clarification, and I gave him the clarification. And he said, now I understand it. I don't know why he didn't, but he didn't. So I think we're going to see this as part of the ACCG platform for nonpartisan unified governments to be able to select locally when they want their election. There's one caveat to that, and that is if we vote in November and have a runoff, the bill's on us. We're going to have to run that election ourselves. They pointed that out to me. I said, fine. The other one is I tried to get, I made a motion along and was seconded by DeKalb County Commissioner to allow local governments to set fines for possession of marijuana for less than an ounce. There were only 5 commissioners in the room at that time and about 10 sheriffs. Sheriffs don't get to vote. A lot of discussion. My motion failed 2-3. But I think this is the first time that ACCG has been asked to consider this issue, and it shall not be the last. Those are the 2 main things I wanted to, there's another one, about the support of revising efforts for enhanced EMS oversight for a bill that's pending in the Senate. I asked the people who had expertise in this bill if that applied to private ambulance companies being managed by private hospitals? And the answer was no, that the oversight, the sunshine laws would not apply in that situation, so that your expectations are set properly.
Any other items that folks would like to highlight? Commissioner Denson?
I get mine was more of a question, I guess, since this is right now entitled only on the agenda, and so this list that we're looking at right now is not available to the public. I guess this question might be to Clerk Spratland. Is this, will we update the online agenda so this document is therefore included
You update it for the first Tuesday.
for the first Tuesday,
We
but
can go
not?
back and add this if you want to. with the agenda.
I think that would be great, just so there's more time for, yeah, that, I would appreciate that. Just so people can see what all is on here, because we do have some pretty big things from increasing, making pay through USG, University System of Georgia employees more equitable, homestead exemptions that are income-based for low-income individuals to stop gentrification. So I think there's some things that people would like to see here, and they can kind of understand why it might be important for them to come out to the work session that's on September 10th.
Commissioner Harrod?
I was just going to follow up on what Commissioner Neesmith was saying about the nonpartisan elections. For those that don't maybe necessarily recall, this all stems from a runoff that was held for the Court of Appeals race in 2012, I believe was the date, in which there had to be a runoff statewide, and the Court of Appeals race is nonpartisan, and the legislature, in its wisdom, moved this situation so that instead of having the election in November and a runoff in December, the initial election then was moved to the primary in usually about May time, with a runoff being the possibility in November. And so that's where we got caught up in that as a nonpartisan consolidated government. We got caught up in that. And so my own personal feeling is we should have our elections in November, because that's when more people are going to come out and vote. So I think it's more representative of the will of the community. And if on occasion we might have to fund a runoff in a particular commission district or countywide, then I think that's a cost that is worth paying.
I agree, Commissioner. Just as a quick follow-up, I've checked in with a couple of parallel mayors of unified governments across the state, some who prefer May and some who prefer November, but this language, of course, allows for that local preference. And, of course, I would always note when the question comes up to state folks that it's not been unusual for a statewide Senate race to produce a runoff that carries us into December, or recently the Secretary of State's race, for that matter.
Let me add an interesting dynamic to this, because another issue that came up at ACCG policymaking meeting was from the president of ACCG, who's a commissioner in Oglethorpe County. He forwarded the notion, made a motion, which was accepted, that every county government can decide whether or not it wants to have a partisan or nonpartisan election. So that's probably going to put some steam under what we're trying to do here, because he too didn't want a nonpartisan election to be held in the spring. But he also believes that the county governments should be able to choose, just like we're asking for. So,
Commissioner Edwards?
I know that there's been an effort to move these elections to November for some years now. What would happen if we restored partisan elections to the commission?
we can't.
So
How can that be?
in 2004, by referendum for the voters, elections were moved to nonpartisan. So my suspicion would be that it would require another referendum to create partisan elections if the desire was to move in that direction.
I guess the choice would be, we could remain nonpartisan but have elections at a time when not as many people vote, or we could move to partisan and have increased participation. Because I know we've been asking for years to move nonpartisan to November to no avail. So, I mean, at some point, do we explore alternatives here in this community to try to increase participation?
I think it's a worthy conversation. A relatively new wrinkle is this question of creating local preference. I think in the past, it's been framed as something that would blanket every nonpartisan county race.
Right, I think
in the
it's
state.
important to know what the objection from our delegation was to our moving nonpartisan elections to November, which was there are other unified governments who are also nonpartisan who don't want to move it to November. So that's why this, making it a local choice makes it, could overcome that hurdle. And then, yeah, I'm not going to say the name of the counties, but, so that's why this may work this time. I'm not ready to give up on nonpartisan for the same reasons that our neighboring county, which has a different political atmosphere than us, want to move it to nonpartisan because they want more participation in people running for office. And that's one of the things that was attractive about us going nonpartisan is you didn't have to declare when you went into the primary votes that you were Republican or Democrat and have to vote just that slate. You wanted to be able to pick your government regardless of party. So by doing away with party, people get to pick their government.
All right, fix it for us, Jerry.
All right, any other matter for the delegation folks would like to have make comment upon? Let's leave this on discussion, Gene. Thank you. All right, item number 11 is acceptance of the operations audit of the Clarke County Sheriff's Office. The audit of a constitutional office is somewhat atypical. It just doesn't happen that often. I think it's happened once before, kind of in my observation of the life of the unified government. And so the audit was read into the record, and this just provides an opportunity for formal acceptance by this body. So, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, as chair of the audit committee, which the mayor just appointed me to early this year, I was not even on the committee when, in fact, nobody on the audit committee was on the committee when this was assigned about over a year and a half ago, I believe. Almost 2 years ago, actually. It's been a huge, huge audit. Of course, it's a big department, very complex. And so we have a pretty substantial audit report, well over 40 pages. I know there's a lot of confusion in the community and concern in the community about the findings and the recommendations. And so at the last audit committee, we voted to make a formal request of the mayor that a presentation be added to one of our upcoming work sessions, a public presentation of the findings of the audit, which the auditor already has prepared. She gave a presentation to the audit committee soon after the draft was kind of put together. And we'd like to give the sheriff a public opportunity to respond to the findings and offer an update on how he's following up on the recommendations. I mean, right here, we're not going to, right here in this format, we're not going to go through this whole audit. And I believe the whole commission deserves an opportunity to have that public discussion about the findings, and the public deserves that opportunity to be presented with those findings. So I would like to ask the mayor that be considered for a future work session. I think that's probably all I have to add, but I do hope that we can have that public discussion about
Thanks,
this.
Commissioner. We'll look for that date.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Neesmith?
I think it might be a good idea to sort of explain, maybe even to the audit committee, my perception anyway of how this audit came about. It was really quite simple. Some of us heard from jailers about these issues and how serious they were. And asked the audit committee and asked the auditor to audit the jail to see if there was any grounds for these very serious issues. And the issues that I heard about were exactly what the audit committee came back with no input from me, by the way, none whatsoever. So this wasn't something that was randomly decided to do. It wasn't something that was the default audit to be done. It was something that where at least one commissioner had heard that there were issues at the jail. It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with safety. It has to do with employee morale. It has to do with the ability to recruit and retain. That's what it has to do with.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, and I also want to point out that, the issues with understaffing and recruitment and retention, although they've been found to be severe at our particular facility, they're not unique to our particular facility. This is a trend across the nation in this area. In fact, when I took a little road trip up north last month, I saw a billboard in South Carolina trying to recruit sheriffs or deputies, and I also saw a flyer in a truck stop trying to recruit. So while we do have problems particular to our facility, it's exacerbated by a national trend. And I think that there are some good recommendations, and I'd like the opportunity to talk with the sheriff and ask him what we can do to help in their operations.
Commissioner Harrod?
Well, I just wanted to kind of follow up a little bit. With regards to the audit committee, the audit committee works to audit departments of the government that fall under the management of the manager, and we have the authority to insist on auditing particular departments. But I think it's really important to understand that when it comes to constitutional officers, such as the sheriff, we do not have the authority to force an audit on a constitutional officer. And so I think the sheriff is to be commended for recognizing that there were perhaps some issues, and that going forward with an audit would help his office, the sheriff's office. He's not required to work with us on an audit. He's a constitutional officer. He does not answer to the manager. He does not answer to us. He is separately elected. His position, along with several of others, such as clerk of courts, is laid out in the Constitution of the state of Georgia. We do not have authority over him other than allocating his budget once a year. But after that, he has full control to run his department as he sees fit. And so I think that the fact that he is involved in this, cooperating in this, I think it needs to be given some credit for doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so this will move to the voting meeting, first Tuesday of September. We have one planning and zoning item. I'm going to go ahead and move down to the desk next to Assistant Manager Edwards. Discussion, Gene. Yep. And again, for those who've been around the block quite a few times, we now have public input after the staff presentation on each planning and zoning item. But we're going to begin our discussion of the single planning and zoning item at 1331 South Millage with a short presentation from Planning Department Director Brad Griffin.
Thank you, Mayor. One item tonight is amendment to a PD at 1331 South Millage Avenue. Most of you, if not all of you, will remember this. This is the El Barrio Restaurant on Millage Avenue. What this is really all about, there was a PD approved. It went to construction. It was built per the PD, but at some point during that construction process, first of all, as part of the PD approval, they asked for and received a waiver to reduce their required conserved canopy from 15% down to about 3.5%. That was part of the PD approved. That 3.5% equated to essentially 2 trees that were on the property that qualified for conserved trees based on area of disturbance, not within certain. If you go out there and look, there are a lot of trees that are out there on the property, but the ones that are there today, while retained, technically don't meet the conserve requirements of the tree ordinance, so we're not able to count them in that number. 2 trees, when the CO inspections were done prior to opening in spring, it was noted that both of those trees, one of which was a small crepe myrtle in the front, the other was a dogwood in the back, had both inadvertently been removed. And so we had a problem from a standpoint, we've got a PD that's got a waiver. We have a policy that you all are familiar with that deals with administrative modifications if there are minor changes that do not otherwise need waivers. If they otherwise meet code requirements, I can send that to you for your consideration under a shortened time frame. It does not go through this process. Because we needed to amend the waiver now from 3% down to 0, we had no other option with that other than to amend this PD and bring it back to you for your consideration. So that's kind of the long and short of it. That's the waiver. Location, zoning, the finished product. There were a couple other minor changes that we were able to process under the administrative modification. One being the small putting green you see there in the front to the right, and then the other was a phasing in of what they referred to as banyas, that in the original approved PD, they were covered areas with shelters on top, and they wanted to, as an intermediate phase, provide tables, but not provide the rest of it, but did not want to give up their ability to finish it in a second phase. Those were done under your authority to provide me guidance for administrative action. So what we're really talking about tonight is the issue of the trees. As I mentioned, the 2 trees, I think they're showing right, that's where they were. The revised tree management plan that's been submitted, and I think the trees have already been put in, exceeds what otherwise would have been required for planted and conserved by about an additional 15%. Really not a lot of additional areas in which to plant trees on the property other than where they have offered to do them. So with that, Planning Commission considered the request and is recommending approval.
Thank you, Brad. Now's the time for any member of the public may provide input of 3 minutes on this item. Kind of same format as earlier applies. The light will turn green when you begin speaking, yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red when your 3 minutes is up. And if you would read your name and let us know why you're here, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Gertz. My name is Bob Smith with Smith Planning Group, and I really have no more to add to Brad's presentation other than to say I wish I were here under different circumstances. But I'll certainly be glad to answer any questions you have regarding this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other public input on this item? All right, Commissioner Wright, this is in your district.
I've been told by a couple of my esteemed colleagues I've already spoken too much, but since this is in my district, I do believe I should speak to this.
It's only 2 trees, so you don't have much to say.
Well, if there was some misunderstanding, I'm glad it's moved forward. I'm glad it's been corrected. It's clear that there's enough shade for it to be busy all the time, even in this heat. So I do appreciate my colleagues helping out at Cinco de Mayo for the things that we did move forward at that time, and they, like you say, they have replanted. The crepe myrtle was more in the shrubbed version of a crepe myrtle, and they put in what we would call a tree at this point. And then the dogwood that got knocked down by somebody who wasn't paying attention to the retaining wall has been replaced.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're kind of going above and beyond to make up for the loss of the 2 specimens that were lost in the, by putting in substantial evergreen magnolias and over a non-native crepe myrtle. So yeah, I mean, I think this makes sense. And it sounds like there are also trees there that, I mean, I've driven by plenty of times. It never struck me as being a treeless wasteland. There are trees there that simply don't make the count, but they are mature trees.
Commissioner Neesmith?
I think it's also noteworthy that both of these trees were removed not by the developer, but by someone else. Property owner may have done it. So they didn't overtly fail to comply knowingly. This happened out of the control of the developer.
A Grinch-esque loss of
A Grinch-esque loss, yes. And so I think we should support it.
Commissioner Denson?
Yeah, and this question is mainly based on, like, I don't at this time yet completely understand all of the intricacies of our tree canopy ordinance. I'm guessing also people watching at home don't either. And so it's when you look at the suggested is 15%, but what we're moving towards is 0%, yet there are these trees. Can you explain that a little bit, how we can have all these trees, but they don't count towards the canopy? Because it sounds like we're really making quite the concession here of going to 0%, so.
I can. In order to qualify as a conserved tree under the ordinance, there are limitations in which you cannot grade, you can't build, you cannot have development existing. And so in the case of the trees, as people drive by and they still see large trees on this property, the reason those cannot be counted, there was a sidewalk installed within the first 10 feet, I believe, is really considered a critical area. And anything inside of that loses the ability to count as conserved. So the installed sidewalks that go out to the Banya area probably eliminated some of those, even though the overall true grading around the roots of the tree was minimal, but it was very close on one side. Those types of technical standards in terms of disturbance within certain areas, and that area is generally based on the size of the tree, the caliper of the tree, or the canopy area then dictates how close you can get to that tree and still count it as conserved. But it's a fair question because it does not look like a zero conserved canopy.
Right, so then, if I'm following what you're saying, then so the construction and development intrudes enough on the area the trees are growing, the root structures, is that because it therefore possibly puts them in future danger of being able to sustain? Okay.
Long term.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
A quick question. Do we have any standards for replanting trees? I've been thinking about this for a while. When you have properties and a large tree is lost, I mean, we've had plenty of them come down last night. We have these canopy requirements, and say you have a project that meets these canopy requirements, and several years down the line, it no longer meets the canopy requirements because it's lost some trees. We have no requirements for replanting for that, do we?
We generally will do extended inspections on new projects out to about a 5-year mark to ensure health and I mean, typically at that point on newly planted trees or on trees that were existing as conserved, 5 years is about that mark where you're either going to see significant decline in a conserved tree, or if it was planted, it's going to be dead.
Yeah.
If it's going to die. Beyond that, we really don't have a continued inspection program. They would be picked up at the point when they ever came back to do a renovation or a modification to the property. If they had fallen below that number, they would have to replant again at that point. The other thing the ordinance does not address, that some ordinances around the state do, is an inch per inch type of replacement. If you're going to lose a very large significant tree, I think Fulton County at one point many years ago, and there are probably some other ones, that there was a formula for, you lost a 30-inch tree, you may have to plant back 10 3-inch trees to replace that one that was lost. Our ordinance did not go to that extent, but it is based on long-term canopy coverage based on the type of tree. And then they have the ability to pick, in most cases, what types of trees are put in.
Well, I understand we have a newly revived tree council, thanks to the mayor. So I would hope that they'd start thinking about enhancing this ordinance, especially in light of climate change and the severe storms that we're getting on a regular basis. I mean, I know every time one of these storms comes through, Boulevard loses another big tree, and there goes your shade. And certainly many of the trees that come down are not appropriate for urban environments. They don't live long lives, and they are dangerous, but there are plenty of species out there that are completely appropriate and can live very long lives in these urban environments and provide the shade that we so desperately need down here in Georgia.
Any other input on this item? All right, this one will receive a vote at the first Tuesday of September meeting. Thank you, Brad.
Sure.
All right, we're going to move into executive session. So thanks to everybody who came to attend this evening. Hope you have a great one.